On today's show, we run our mock draft for the top 23 teams in the 2024 NHL draft for the first round. Coming up on today's episode of Locked On NHL Prospects.
You are Locked On NHL Prospects, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello and welcome back to Locked On NHL Prospects, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. On this podcast, we break down everything prospects related to you 5 days a week, Monday to Friday. I'm Hadi Kalakash, Director of North American Scouting for Dobber Prospects, joined by Sebastian High, Director of European Scouting and Head Scout for Dobber Prospects. And on today's show, we'll be breaking down our mock draft for the 2024 NHL draft. We've picked a player for each of the 23 teams that are locked in for the draft, so we know exactly where they're picking. That's why it's 23 specifically, because the 8 other teams are still waiting. We're still waiting to see where they end up in the playoffs and where they'll end up being selecting for the 2024 NHL draft there. Before I get into any of that, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers can get up to $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get things started. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure to like and subscribe. Leave us a comment letting us know what you want us to talk about next. And if you're listening on your favorite podcasting platform, please leave us a rate and review and make sure to make us your first listen of the day. So I think we can get first overall out of the way. The San Jose Sharks are picking Macklin Celebrini. There's no doubt about this. It's going to be him. And they're getting the most complete player in this draft, the most high upside player in this draft. The skill levels off the charts, the dynamism's off the charts. His ability to create offense off the rush is like no one in this draft. No brainer here at first overall with Macklin Celebrini. I think we can just glide through this and go right to second overall for the Chicago Blackhawks, because draft-wise, this is where it opens up. And we've gone with Artyom Levshinov, the 6'2", 200-pound right-handed defenseman out of Michigan State for the Chicago Blackhawks. They could have gone with Ivan Demidov, but I feel like Chicago's going to look at Levshinov and see a player they can't pass up on. Fits the need really well. Great upside as well, really athletic, really dedicated to the sport, work ethic-wise, effort level-wise, and in terms of dedication to the sport, I mean, there's not a lot that compete with him, right?
There really isn't. He's a real freak athlete in terms of the raw athleticism, but also the progression over the course of the past 2 years. He went from playing U18 Belarusian hockey to the USHL in his D-1. And in that season, he put up a lot of points, but was still very raw in terms of his habits and overall output on the ice. But in his draft year season with Michigan State, he was their rock on the back end, and certainly still made some mistakes. Was not flawless by any means, but I don't think that Michigan State gets anywhere near as far as they do without him. He was central to their run, and they were unexpected to be as dominant as they were this season, and he played a massive role in that.
Absolutely. And that moves us up to third overall for the Anaheim Ducks, who have Ivan Demidov, the winger out of SKA 1946 in the MHL, a left shot winger who plays with so much creativity and inventiveness. He's got the best hands in the draft. He's got a lot of offensive upside. I mean, there's a world where Demidov puts up 100 points. Like it's a possibility, especially with how the NHL's trending points wise. It's just going up and up and up. I could very well see Demidov hit that ceiling. He puts an effort defensively. I don't say he's responsible defensively or defensively aware, but the energy's there, the effort level's there, the intention's there. But on top of that and beyond all of that, I mean, for me, the offensive skill level is ridiculous. He's got a booming shot, great hands, the best hands in the draft, and a really good playmaking touch. At fourth overall, we have the Columbus Blue Jackets picking Anton Salayev, the 6'7" left shot defenseman out of Torpedo in the KHL. He's been playing in the KHL all year, and for good reason. He's got the frame, he's got the mobility, the best size and mobility combo in the draft by far. One of the best we've seen in a long amount of time. And yes, Salayev just brings a lot of defensive responsibility, a lot of gap closing ability. We have questions about the offense. We have questions about the decision making, the ability to handle pressure. But overall, there's just a lot of room for improvement with Salayev. And he's got the foundations in order to make the NHL regardless. I don't think there's any scenario in which Salayev doesn't make the NHL. It's just a matter of how high up the lineup he makes it. If he doesn't progress, we're looking at a sixth defenseman. but I could very well see I think it's very, very likely this Live ends up a top 4 defenseman. It's just a matter of how effective and how conducting to good results he'll be. And I think Columbus is the best bet to pick Salayev, mainly because they need a left-handed defenseman. And I think a combination of Anton Salayev and David Jiricek's skill sets for the next 15 years will be some of the best defensive hockey we'll see. Very dynamic, very energetic, very good at suppressing offensive chances. That's a combination of skills that works really well, and that's why we have Columbus picking Salayev at 4th. Now at 5th overall, we have the Montreal Canadiens picking Tej Iginla. And yes, that is with Caden Lindstrom on the board. And we had a bit of a discussion regarding that, but we think Montreal is going to go for the late riser again. And talk me through what makes Tej Iginla the projected pick for Montreal here at 5th overall.
Well, on the one hand, the Habs have a real liking to picking the players that rise late up draft boards, and Tej Iginla is this year's big riser, and I really would be shocked if he was still available at 10th overall, where he's currently projected to go on Bob McKenzie's board, but he can do it all. He is a dynamic player with the puck on his stick. He can create with his hands, with his passing, with his goal scoring. His shot is certainly the most refined tool in his offensive arsenal, but he's far from a raw and pure goal scorer. He's a really high-end playmaker. He has a tremendously high motor. He's really pesty and extremely good at board battles. He consistently wins board battles at a very high rate, and whenever he does win a board battle, he immediately gets the puck to the middle of the ice. He's very intelligent, and the defensive motor is also very high. He's effective in transition, and he's going to be playing down the middle for the Kelowna Rockets as soon as next season. So the positional versatility there is also something that could come into play. He's very young for the draft class. The Montreal Canadiens are going to have a field day with a player who is this young, this versatile, and also has this many high-end tools and the high level of intelligence and work ethic. Martin St. Louis would absolutely adore to work with a player like this, and he's likely going to be in the NHL about a year after being drafted, which fits the Habs window really nicely.
100%. Moving on to 6 overall, we have the unnamed Utah team picking Caden Lindstrom, the big left-handed center. He's 6'3", 210 pounds. He's been playing with the Medicine Hat Tigers, a stacked team in the WHL. He's been injured fairly frequently this year, but I think that things replace themselves as he continues his progression. I don't think any of his injuries were career-threatening or things that could reoccur too frequently. But overall, I think the skill set with Lindstrom is what's really interesting. For a player this big to be able to move that well, to be able to create that well, he's really skillful. He's able to catch pucks, on his stick, whether it's a bad pass or a good pass. He just corrals pucks so well in transition. Doesn't even really need to be looking at the passer in order to receive the puck. So that's a part of his game that'll allow him to get more and more puck touches and kind of develop his game, because he's still very raw. The skill set is there. The habits, the decision-making is still something he's working on. But the intelligence is there. I think he's a very smart player when he sees a lane. He hits it really well with the right type of pass. So there's a lot to love there with Caden Lindstrom in terms of how he's likely to develop his game. He's got a really high ceiling. I think he could become a bona fide first-liner, a first-line play driver if everything goes well. But there's a wider range of outcomes with him than with Tej Iginla, who for me is a guaranteed top 6 player. I don't see many scenarios where that combination of intelligence, board play, and skill don't result in a top 6 role. NHL coaches are going to love him, that's for sure. And to close things off for our first segment, go to 7th overall. We have the Ottawa Senators picking Carter Yakimchuk, the big athletic right-handed defenseman out of the Calgary Hitmen in the WHL. And Yakimchuk, I wouldn't say is in my top 5 top defensemen in this draft, but I think that he's a great fit for Ottawa and a player that Ottawa's going to look at and be really interested. He's really offensively skilled. He fits their structure. They like their defensemen pushing up, getting up the ice, making plays offensively. He's got the athleticism. He's got the build. He's got the skating ability. I just want to see a bit more defensive responsibility, and I want to see him a bit more reined in. Now, if they match him with a guy like Jake Sanderson, who's exactly what he's not, which is a very reliable, very smart, very defensively responsible defenseman, that's a great combination of skills, and I think that's what makes Ottawa likely to pick Yakimchuk here. And Yakimchuk has been ranked as high as 3rd or 4th overall on some rankings. If you look at Corey Pronmans and those kinds of guys, Ekstrom seems to be a lot higher on boards than we have him, but yeah, I think Ottawa it would be, if any team's going to take him in the top 10, I think it's going to be Ottawa. That's for sure. But that's our first segment done. We'll get into our second segment. We'll look at picks 8 through 15. That's Seattle, Calgary, New Jersey, Buffalo, Philly, Minnesota, San Jose again, and Detroit. We'll get into that in just a second. Just before, a quick word from our sponsors at FanDuel.
It's winner take all time in the NBA and NHL, and FanDuel's giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, single game parlays, and far more. I know I'm always a big personal fan of those single game parlays. You get to hand pick a couple stats that you want to swing on, and it can make the action all the more exciting, especially when you're attending an event live, which is already, of course, exciting enough on its own, but why not make it even more so? Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make every playoff shot count. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook.
Alrighty, so moving on to our second segment, we'll look at pick number 8 to start things off in our official mock draft of the top 23, the teams that we know where they're picking. We'll start things off with the Seattle Kraken picking Sam Dickinson at 8th overall. We're talking about a 6'3", almost 200-pound left shot defenseman who's been playing with the London Knights all year in the OHL. A defensively aggressive and offensively aggressive defenseman. Really responsible, great stick, really good physicality. He's punishing in his own zone. You don't want to get past him. You don't want to try to get past him off the rush because he's going to punish you. So there's a lot to like here with Dickinson. And there's decent upside. I mean, we're talking about a player who put up 70 points in 68 games in the OHL this season as a defenseman, and has been doing it from the second power play for the London Knights. So, even though that London Knights team is ridiculous, I mean, they're in the OHL finals, and for good reason. They've blown past every single team they faced this year. Still, I think that it's really interesting that Sam Dickinson's kind of being penned as a defensive defenseman when I see him more as a smooth skating two-way defenseman who just happens to be really good defensively. So I think this is a great pickup for Seattle, who are still kind of figuring out where to move forward after their inaugural season, kind of figure out where they stand in terms of their needs. I think that Dickinson's a very safe pick for them, a prospect who's going to be playing top 4 minutes in the NHL. I don't know about first pair. It's possible. I think it's possible at the end of the day, but still, I think that you're getting at the very least a number 3, number 4 defenseman at the NHL level, and that's decent value. But moving on to 9th overall, we have the Calgary Flames picking Zeev Buium at 9th overall, and I think that Buium's a great fit for what both what Calgary needs, and in terms of value, I think that this is the best value they can get at 9th overall. With the players left on the board, there aren't many that compare with Buium's value at this stage. He was the best player for Denver University pretty much all season in the NCAA as a freshman left-handed defenseman who, forced his way onto the top pair for Denver, forced his way onto the Team USA World Juniors roster when, again, they did not need to bring a draft eligible. They had a lot of options for that tournament, but Zeev Buium forced his way on that team and did a fantastic job. So yeah, just a player who consistently proves his way up lineups. And I think at the end of the day, I think that's going to be the same at the NHL level. And Zeev Buium's going to be an amazing NHL defenseman. And Calgary's, again, getting great value here for a team that's still looking to fill the cupboards after a couple seasons of trading prospects for players and that kind of stuff, and things not working out. They're picking in the top 10 again, and I think this is a great option for them. At 10th overall, we have Cole Eiserman, and I think we have a lot to talk about here for the New Jersey Devils. But we were talking a bit while doing the mock draft, and I think if any team's going to take Cole Eiserman at this stage in the draft, it has to be New Jersey, right?
It does. I think that Cole Eiserman does end up being a top 10 pick at the end of the day, even after being kind of projected as the 13th overall pick in Bob McKenzie's rankings. The goal scoring upside is tremendously high, and especially if you're going to pair him with a centerman like a Jack Hughes, who can get anybody the puck in almost any position at the NHL level, that is a tremendous compliment for a player like Cole Eiserman. And while there's definitely still a lot of warts in his game that will need to be refined before he can play that really high-end top 6 role, being paired with a player of the level of a Nico Hischier or a Jack Hughes will make that road a lot more simple and straightforward for Cole Eiserman to get accustomed to the NHL pace. And especially after Alexander Holtz has kind of failed to fully pan out as that like high-end top six sniper that can put the puck in the net on a very consistent basis, especially on the power play. I think that Eiserman will be able to find his niche at the NHL level on the man advantage.
For sure. And that brings us to 11th overall. And we have the Buffalo Sabres picking Zane Parekh at 11th overall. Now, this is a major slip, in our opinion. This is a player who should be one of the first defensemen off the board. Insanely skilled, insanely creative, so composed as well. He's got ice in his veins when it comes to making plays under pressure. It's amazing to watch. On the puck, there's nothing to reproach with Parekh. Defensively, I think the awareness is there. He knows when threats are coming. He knows where to go to stop them. But I think the problem is both the motor and the physicality. Zane Parekh is an average size right-handed defenseman at about 6 foot, 185 pounds. I don't think he handles physical play that well. This is a defenseman who usually will bear hug a player instead of going for the hit or separating player from puck. It's mainly just kind of like putting his arms around and hoping things work out. But it's also the motor, the energy. I don't think the energy is all there. I think Parekh often leaves some energy for his offensive shifts so that he has more punch in the offensive zone. But overall, I don't think there's much to worry about there because, again, the awareness is there, the composure is there. And once he gets the puck, 99 times out of 100, he's making the right play. And just, again, the skill level is so high. So with Buffalo really needing right-handed defensemen, I think that Parekh is the best option left on the board. And on top of that, I think he's one of the best defensemen in this draft, like beyond that. So for me, Zane Parekh has the upside of a number one defenseman, but there's a wide range of options there. So we'll see how that works out for Buffalo, but I think that this is a great pick for them at 11th overall. And again, a plus value pick outside of the top 10. Nothing new there for Buffalo. Moving on to 12th overall, we have Konsta Helenius going to the Philadelphia Flyers. Now, we had a couple options here for Philadelphia, but we chose to go with Konsta Helenius as their option there because of Matvei Michkov. Matvei Michkov is insanely skilled, insanely creative, a super good goal scorer. But he needs someone who's going to be able to handle the defensive side of the game. He needs someone who's going to be able to assist his defenseman down low and get the puck to Michkov on the breakout. And that's Konsta Helenius to a T. I mean, he's a great playmaker, really defensively responsible, really intelligent. So in terms of a fit with a guy like Matvei Michkov, if Konsta Helenius is going to become a top line forward, he's going to be a number one center. He's going to be playing next to a guy like Matvei Michkov. We have questions about the upside, right? But at the end of the day, there's a lot to love there. At 13th, we have Minnesota picking Berkeley Catton, and I think this is way too low for where Catton should be. But I think in terms of the top WHLers, he's the most likely to slip, right?
He is. He's an undersized forward, but also a pure transition creator. The cycle creation is certainly a little bit more of a work in progress for him at this point, as well as getting to the middle of the ice. But he's highly intelligent. He's very pacey, extremely skilled, and very quick on his feet. He's agile with the puck, but the defensive game isn't particularly strong. He played a ton of minutes, which means that the production was a little bit inflated by that, despite the lack of high-end support in that lineup. And yeah, he's a very high upside swing. He has that top line potential upside, but there's also a world in which he struggles to adapt to the more physical side of the game, and in order to create off the cycle. Like the rush creation is very translatable, and I struggle to see how that doesn't translate to the NHL. But in terms of that like high end cycle play, a lot still has to come, especially on the physical side and in terms of getting to the middle of the ice on a more consistent basis off puck.
Yeah, so think anywhere between Jack Roslovic and Patrick Kane in terms of outcomes for Berkeley Catton. Moving on to 14, we have San Jose picking again with what was it? Tampa Bay's pick? No, that's not Tampa Bay's pick, right?
It is not. It is Pittsburgh's pick from the Erik Karlsson trade.
That's right. And they'll be picking Beckett Seneca at 14th overall. A really fun player who we just did a profile on. You should check that out for more details. But 6'2", 180 pounds, still working on kind of developing his frame, but he's got amazing hands. He's creative. He's got a great shot. And he's really good at improvising his way up the ice, which is great. And at 15th overall to close off this the second segment, we'll be talking about Detroit. They've got a lot of options here at 15, but I think they go with Michael Brunsek Nygard out of is it Mora?
Mora IK in Hockey Allsvenskan in
That's
Sweden, correct. And
let
Detroit
me
loves
restart that.
drafting.
Yeah, let me restart that just to be sure. To close things off for a second segment, at 15th overall, we have the Detroit Red Wings picking Michael Brandzek Nygård out of Mora IK in the Hockey Allsvenskan, the second division of pro Swedish hockey. Why does Detroit go for this player?
They love picking out of Sweden, and he brings a ton of value to the table. He is a high motor, high intelligence defensive player, but he's far more than that too. While the defensive play is what has shown the brightest so far in his professional career, he's a really dangerous goal scorer, and the offensive impact got better and better as the season went on, and he put up 10 points in 12 playoff games for Mora in Hockey Allsvenskan. So I think that the offensive upside is certainly getting a lot better in terms of projection, and he's a high-end handler as well. And yeah, he's a fascinating project to take on that I think Detroit would absolutely love to add to their cupboard.
6'1", 195 doesn't harm either. But that wraps it up for a second segment. We'll get into our third, where we talk about picks 16 through 23, the St. Louis, Washington, the Islanders, the Golden Knights, Chicago again, LA, Nashville, and Toronto, all coming up in a second. Just before, a quick word from our sponsors at Policy Genius. Life insurance policies are such an important safety net for you and your family, but trying to find the right policy is extremely difficult with so many options out there. It can get really time consuming and overwhelming, and that's where Policy Genius comes in. Policy Genius helps you compare your options from top companies, and their team of licensed experts is on hand to talk you through the whole process. You can talk to a team of award-winning agents who will walk you through the process step by step, make sure you get the right policy, and easily compare quotes from America's top insurers in just a few clicks to find your lowest price. Your work life insurance policy may not offer enough protection for you and your family's needs, and worse than that, if you quit your job, if you leave for any reason, it might not follow you. And that's why Policy Genius is super useful, because they give you unbiased advice from a licensed expert support team. They have no incentive to recommend one insurer over the other, so you can trust their guidance, and thousands of 5-star reviews on Google and Trustpilot from customers who found their best fit for their needs is more than likely to help you make the right decision there. So check life insurance off of your to-do list in no time with Policy Genius. Head to policygenius.com/lockedonnhl or click the link in the description below to get your free life insurance quotes and see how much you could save. That's policygenius.com/lockedonnhl. Alrighty, so let's close things off here in our mock draft with pick number 16 from the St. Louis Blues. We have Liam Greentree going to the St. Louis Blues, and I don't think I could see a better fit in this draft than Greentree to St. Louis, right?
There really isn't. He screams St. Louis. This is a high energy, high IQ, physical forward who has mainly played on the wing, but has played some shifts down the middle, but I still think projects best as a winger. The defensive impact's quite strong with him. He's already a captain, one of only two in the CHL that are draft eligible, along with Tanner Howe of the Regina Pats. And the combination of high IQ, high motor, physicality, but also a real tendency for highlight real goals. He's not the best skater, but he's a really efficient handler, and when he scores goals, they are absolute beauties. So he could also get those Blues fans out of their seats.
Absolutely. A great scorer, but has added so much to his game, has shown a lot more intelligence and intricacy in his game, which is really interesting. Moving on to 17th overall, we have the Washington Capitals picking Igor Chernyshov, and this is another great fit. They've got a couple of interesting center prospects, including Hendrix Lapierre, who's been playing really well as of late. And I think Igor Chernyshov's big frame, impressive skating, great defensive ability, and power forward game really gels well with that. He's got a great shot. I've honestly liked his playmaking more and more, but what really stands out for me is the hands. He's got great handling ability for a big guy. Gets off the boards really comfortably, and makes a lot of really smart defensive plays, recovers a lot of pucks in the offensive zone off of dump-ins. It's a really efficient, translatable power forward, and I think that the Washington Capitals are getting a great player here, and a player I'd say is slightly plus value. Not necessarily the highest value you could get at 17th, but good enough that I think he's gonna make the NHL and be a very efficient player in the middle six, potentially a second line play driver, something like that. There's a couple outcomes out there for Chernyshov, but I think all roads lead to the NHL with this prospect. At 18th overall, we have the New York Islanders picking Sacha Boisvert, which is the most New York Islanders pick I can think of. Another power forward. I think he's like 6'2", 200 pounds, and playing with the Muskegon Lumberjacks this season in the USHL. And yeah, just a really good net driver. He's a player who protects pucks really well, who's able to shoot inside of puck protection mechanics, which is really interesting. He can kind of lift pucks in tight after kind of driving the net with his shoulder down. A really accurate kind of shooter from the half wall as well. Great one-timer, great wrister, great catch and release. The shot is multifaceted, really versatile, and really effective. And on top of that, he's got great defensive value. Now, he does need to improve his skating. I think that's the key part for Boisvert to be effective in the NHL level. But as a left shot center with that size, with that frame, with that physical tendency, I think that's a great combination. But talk me through the pick for Vegas at 19th overall, because this is an interesting one. And we had an interesting thought experiment with Vegas's recent picks, and thinking, they always seem to pick the highest value player, not the highest upside player, right?
Yeah, I mean, the Vegas Golden Knights often trade the players they draft, and so we have him going with Emil Hemming. He is very young for the draft class, which means that his value could quite conceivably go up a decent amount in the coming years, and he is a really interesting player. He's a high-end goal scorer, wicked shot. The playmaking game has been developing over the course of the season. He's a really good puck handler. He's a good skater, but what's really impressed me specifically this year has been that he's played almost the entirety of the season with TPS in Liga in Finland professionally, and he was playing a fourth line checking role. So he was able to integrate a lot of habits into his game to play that type of depth role, and really established an interesting fallback game for himself. And that's what gives him that high value. He's basically a lock to be an NHLer in some type of capacity because of that. And he really ramped up his motor and his defensive impact and his defensive reads and habits and overall intuition. So his progression over the course of the season has been very promising, and he's added a lot of versatility to his already intriguing toolkit.
Absolutely. And that brings us to pick number 20. We have the Chicago Blackhawks picking Trevor Connolly out of the Tri-City Storm in the USHL. He's a left winger, 6'1", 161 pounds, so pretty average size, a bit underweight, but can definitely add some weight on that frame in the next few years. In terms of skill and dynamism, there aren't much that match with Connolly in this draft, but there's a lot of question marks around on-ice and off-ice decision-making. He's usually the type of player who's trying to push the offensive zone, to try to make the final pass on plays, to try to shoot the puck in the back of the net. He's always thinking points when he gets the puck. But, I want to see a bit more intricacy and a bit more chess in this game. We haven't seen that yet. And the off-ice issues, I mean, you can read up on that. We won't talk about it too much on the podcast, but it is pretty concerning. But the rationale here for Chicago picking him at 20 is really simple. They went with a right-handed defenseman with their second overall pick and missed out on Ivan Demidov. I think they're going to want to add someone who can play with Connor Bedard, who can play with his at his level of skill, at his level of pace, and I think that Connolly's your best bet at 20th overall. So they got their high skill player. They've got their potential top pair defenseman in this draft. A great haul for Chicago moving forward. At 21st, we have Adam Juracek going to the LA Kings. Listen, Drew Doughty's going to leave soon. Brent Clark is there, but as a safety net, as a second pair right-handed defenseman, I think that Adam Juracek is a great option for them. Pretty average size, 6'1", 158 pounds, something like that at latest count. Can add some weight on that frame. He was injured pretty much the whole year, but the upside's still there. The creativity's still there. The translatability of his breakout passing is still there. So there's a lot to like there. At 22, we have Michael Hage going to the Nashville Predators. I think this is a great option for them. A lot of skill, a lot of pace, decent amount of defensive responsibility that honestly only started showing this year. Like, this wasn't a thing before this year, but he's added a bit more versatility to his game, which is really interesting. But great shooter, great passer, great handler, great skater. A lot to love there. High upside swing. We know Nashville loves those. So that's locked and loaded. And finally, to close things off, I'll let you go off on your favorite player, Dominik Badinka, going to the Toronto Maple Leafs at 23rd overall. Talk me through the rationale for that, the size, the handedness, the profile for Dominik Badinka here, just to close us off.
Yeah, he's a 6'3" right shot defenseman. He's a shade under 200 pounds. Played a lot of professional hockey in the SHL with the Malmö Redhawks this season, and he's a high-end breakout passer on top of being a real physical presence on the back end. He's a really intelligent rush defender. He defends the cycle very well. Can clear the net front. Has a lot of those check boxes that the Toronto Maple Leafs are very vocal in what they want to add into their organization after being eliminated by the Boston Bruins yet again in the first round. And on top of that defensive solidity, there's also a decent amount of that puck moving game in the passing game. The handling is certainly a weakness with him, and the offensive impact is certainly going to be limited by that. I don't think that you're looking at a 35 plus point scorer in this player, but you're looking at a player that can really spark the breakout, shut down play defensively, and quite conceivably be that second pairing steadying force. I also think he has a pretty high floor as a third pairing guy. So you're getting a legitimate piece here that is going to be an impact player in some capacity in the next 2 years, and I think the Leafs are certainly looking up that alley.
Absolutely. And that wraps things up for today's show and our mock draft so far. Thank you very much for tuning in. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure to like and subscribe. Leave us a comment letting us know what you want us to talk about next and what you thought of the episode. Who you like your team picking according to our mock draft as well. Let us know that. And if you're listening on your favorite podcasting platform, leave us a rate and review. Make sure to make us your first listen of the day. For your second listen of the day, make sure to check out Locked On Sports Today. They've got all your news and updates on YouTube on a 24/7 channel. And make sure to tune in for our next shows as we continue our prospect coverage for the month of May. This has been Hadi Kalikesh with Sebastian High, and we hope you tune in next time.